Cell Transport, Unit 3, Video 1. The cellular plasma membrane, or the fluid mosaic model, is composed of a double layer of phospholipids and proteins. It surrounds the outside of all cells and controls what enters or leaves the cell, kind of like a gateway. It is also referred to as a living layer, meaning that the proteins and things that are embedded within the membrane can move. Phospholipids are going to contain a head that has the glycerol and phosphate and are hydrophilic, and they will attract water. If you remember what we talked about with lipids when we were talking about macromolecules, this should seem familiar. Tails are made of fatty acids and are hydrophobic. They will repel the water. They make up a bilayer where tails point inward towards one another, and the heads are going to be on the outside edges. They can move laterally to allow small molecules, oxygen, carbon dioxide, water, to enter and leave. The cell membrane is fluid, meaning that the proteins and things are constantly moving, adjusting, and changing within the cell membrane. Cell membrane proteins. Proteins help move large molecules or aid in cell recognition. You can have peripheral proteins, which would be the red in this particular diagram. They are attached on the surface, the inner or outer. And integral proteins are going to be embedded completely through the membrane. They will be gateways into the cell or out of it. Glycoproteins are a special kind of protein. They will help recognize cell to cell. They recognize self or cells that are like themselves. And the carbohydrate tails help with that as markers for cell recognition. In plants, the cell membrane is going to be located immediately against the cell wall in the plant cells, and it will push out against the cell wall to help maintain the cell's shape. Now, particles have to be able to get in and out of the cell membrane. That's why it's composed the way it is, so that particles can get in and out. There are several types of transport that we're going to be talking about as we move forward. So diffusion is the process of getting particles like calcium and potassium across the membrane. And there are two types of diffusion, or two types of transport. We have active and passive. So here we have a little dude that is trying to get into the cell. He doesn't fit into any of the integral proteins, but then he goes in. But the next one has to use an integral protein. The last thing is too big to get in. So again, the cell membrane is controlling what can get in or through the membrane. So here we have the cell and the extracellular fluid. Things are always moving in and out of the cell, and it's going to be selectively permeable. Only certain things can get in and out, as is shown by this. The organelles aren't going to slip out. Bigger particles aren't going to be able to get out. But the smaller things that we can move in and out will move. Passive transport. Does osmosis or diffusion require energy? The answer is no. The molecules will move along a concentration gradient. Now, this concentration gradient means that for diffusion, or for passive transport, we're going to go from an area of high to an area of low. It's kind of like a slide. You go from the top of the slide down to the bottom of the slide. That doesn't require any energy. You just ride down the slide. So osmosis is a special type of passive transport where we are moving water, and of any of the types of transport, this one is probably the most important. Osmosis has three types of solutions that we can put the cell into. We have hypertonic cell solutions, we have hypotonic, and we have isotonic. Hypertonic means that the cell will shrivel. This means that there is more water inside the cell than outside the cell, so the water is going to move out, go to where there is less water. You can also think of it as the cell's going to shrivel up and die and needs to go to the ER to get help. Hypotonic is where there's more water outside the cell than in. The water will move in, and this is where the cell will swell. Isotonic, iso meaning same, is going to be where the cell stays the same. The equal movement in and out is maintaining homeostasis. It's maintaining a balance. For plant cells, they like to be at a hypotonic solution. They like to be turgid, where the cell membrane is pushing out on the cell wall. But in an animal cell, their cell wall is not there. so they have nothing to maintain the structure of it and keep everything contained, so at a certain point too much water will go in and the cells will burst. But plant cells like that turgid feeling, where they're swollen. Isotonic is where animal cells are the happiest. This is normal, where they have an equal movement in and out, whereas plant cells are going to become a little less stiff, and they'll become flaccid. Think of wilty plants. Hypertonic solutions are not good for either type of animal cell or plant cell. Think of hypertonic solution as putting the cells in salt water. There's more salt than water on the outside, so the water will move out and the cells will shrivel up and die. When you are cooking and you add salt to the pan, that's drawing the water out, is an example of a hypertonic solution. Facilitated diffusion, these are going to be where the molecules will move down a concentration gradient with the aid of special proteins. These are going to be for particles that are too large to move through the cell membrane on their own, so they will need something to help them. And that's where the integral proteins will come in. They provide that channel for these specific molecules. But still a type of diffusion, still going from high to low, but we're using a protein to do it. Active transport is where we need the energy. Here's the biggest clue. If you're looking at a diagram and it says something like ATP or requires energy, you have active transport. These are going to use ATP, form of energy made by the mitochondria during cell respiration, and it will move against the concentration gradient. So this means we're going to go from low to high. If passive transport was going down the slide, then active transport would be akin to going up the slide. It requires energy for you to move from the bottom of the slide to the top of the slide. And you can't tell me that as kids you didn't do that. So going from the bottom of the slide to the top of the slide is active transport. A special type of active transport is endocytosis. This is where we transport material into the cell by the infolding of a membrane. It creates a vesicle. There are two types of endocytosis. This is phagocytosis, where solid particles are ingested into the cell, and pinocytosis, where liquids are taken into the cell. Exocytosis is where we move materials out of the cell. So you have vesicles that will form and push the materials out of the cell. It will actually form with the cell membrane. Alright, so I'm going to show you a video of an amoeba. Now the amoeba is this guy right here, the jelly looking stuff. The paramecium are these guys. This is the process of endocytosis. He's taking them in, and he's going to release digestive enzymes right here where he will actually kill the paramecium and eat them. Special type of endocytosis, but this is active transport at work. Alright, so in summary, what is diffusion? Diffusion is the movement of particles across the membrane. What is osmosis? Osmosis is the movement of water across the membrane. Active transport is transport using energy. Passive transport is transport that does not require energy. It goes with the concentration gradient from high to low. Active transport goes from low to high. I hope that you found this useful, and please do not forget to whisk. If you have any questions, let me know.